online. Very, very good, very insightful. You guys are really talking to each other and really getting some good discussions going, so keep it up. And everybody's here. We're going to do a little reintroduction. We're trying to recruit a new Purple Knight here. This is my baby cousin. And
hello, baby cousin.
What's up?
Not really a baby anymore, but but he's going to introduce himself, tell you where he's from, tell you what year he is in school, and tell you what his interests are. And then you guys are going to go around and give your name, tell what year you are, where you're from. You got to do that too. And something interesting that you wanted to know. Not like we did the first day class, but you know. Okay?
That's good. All right. I started?
You start.
Cool. What's up, you guys? I'm Mark, baby cousin, right? I'm from Seattle. So you know, a sophomore, maybe junior. I gotta check my credits, right? And I like sports. I'm in a fantasy league right now. Can you guys do that?
Oh yeah.
Went to dance class last night. It was fun. Yeah, just like kicking it, hanging out, you know. Yeah.
You live on campus?
No.
No.
Good for you. You guys are probably all here.
Yeah.
The houses look dope though. Anyway, sorry. All right, go ahead. What do you think?
Oh,
Yeah, Matt, you're on.
Oh, I'm John. I'm a senior here. I'm a business major. I'm from Massachusetts. I also like to play fantasy, watch football, and let me know if you need anything around campus or need any help with anything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Brendan, I'm a senior as well.
Oh, and tell your majors too.
Yeah, I'm a business major, history minor. I'm from Hingham, Massachusetts, just south of Boston. I love sports as well. I play lacrosse here, and I love football. Tom Brady's my guy, so.
I got Brady on the team right
There
now.
you go. That's what's winning.
Yeah, I'm killing him.
I'm James. I'm from Nantucket, Mass. I also used to play lacrosse here. I love football, play fantasy as well. Same thing as well with the business major, history minor.
Cool.
Hi, I'm JP LaBarge. I'm from Cape Cod, Mass, and I'm a business major. I'm a freshman, and I like to fish.
I'm Robbie Carlson. I'm from Massachusetts as well. I am a junior this year. I'm a double major in secondary education and history, so I'm looking to be a history teacher. And something interesting about me, I'm a ski instructor. Been skiing since I was 6 months. Yeah.
Well, I'm Ian Hislop. I'm a business major, but I think I'm going to switch to history. I'm from St. Pete, Florida, a little far away from home. I play baseball here, and I'm an avid wake surfer.
My name's Brady. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm undecided. I go to CrossFit.
My name is Celia, and originally born in Myanmar or Burma, but I grew up in Thailand. And my major is international relations, and I'm senior.
I'm Kayla. I'm an art major. I live in Milton, like an hour away from here. And I like to doodle all over everything.
I'm Connor. I'm from Lexington, Mass. My major is engineering, and I started.
I'm Amanda. I'm from Alton, New Hampshire. I have no idea what I'm going to be studying, and I like skiing.
I'm an Harrison from Boston, Mass. I'm a sports art major.
My name's Luke. I'm from Duxbury, Massachusetts. Business major, finance minor, and I like skateboarding.
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm from Quincy, Mass. I am exploratory. I like watching movies, reading books, music, you know.
I'm Caleb. I'm from Danville, New Hampshire. I'm a psych major, and directed a bunch of stuff in high school.
And I'm Dr. Dungy. I was in college, I was a history, sociology, and Spanish major because I just like to overdo.
Wow.
And I'm in control of this class. Horizontal and vertical. And for those of you who came in late, this is my cousin Mark. And we're trying to get him to come here. So.
It's a nice school so far. Yeah.
Okay, so, when last we met, we were, well, does anybody want to tell Mark, because, you know, this is my day job, and, you know, my other job is like, whatever, so he doesn't really know what I do. So what do we do in this class? What do we?
Learn about history.
You don't really get
If you didn't know already.
Well, I mean, last time we were talking about like the Spanish, like expansion throughout the Caribbean.
Oh, okay.
Right now we're focusing on, well, it's Caribbean history class. So we're focusing on right now, like more European powers coming in and fighting with the Spanish war. So that's about it.
Anybody want to add anything?
You did.
We're basically talking about how the Spanish came and just really just messed everything up in the Caribbean. Pretty much to sum it up and dumb it down.
We had class outside last night.
Yeah, we should do that
You guys
again.
want to-
It was nice. It's nice out today.
It's pretty.
No, it's cold today.
No.
So nice.
This
Cold
is like
no,
a
this is
normal
temperature.
Remember, he is from the
I was
tropics.
so
Give him a break. He doesn't know cold yet.
Wait till you hit the next.
For my first class, I like walked out in like a t-shirt and shorts, and then when I walked to class, like absolutely shivering.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah, you know, you have to learn the art of layering.
Yeah.
So,
Layers.
yeah.
Or just get one really heavy coat.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you do have to have one
Down coat.
proper winter coat.
That's I'd suggest. Yeah, one down coat.
Yeah.
Other than a ski jacket, less bulky.
It gets colder than it does in Washington, so.
You guys get real snow out here.
We get real
Yeah,
snow.
yeah.
Like, got a shovel kind.
Thankfully, we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like living in a condo. You don't have to do all that, the hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We aren't even home to get our parents to make us do it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's why we have kids, is to have you guys shovel. Like, oh, darn, they're going to college. Okay, so speaking of parents, let's talk about the Spanish, and we've been so far for the last 3 weeks talking exclusively about the Spanish, and they're coming in and dominating and setting up shop in the Caribbean. Now you're doing some reading about all the other guys who are like, well, what about us? We want a piece of this too. And of course the Spanish are going to have a pushback on this. So this is what we're going to talk about today, is the pushback. You've been reading about it, and I'll just try and consolidate some of the things. If you have questions from your readings, hopefully this will answer some of that, but if there are things that aren't being answered, as always, just pop in and say, but what about, and I don't get, and you know, whatever. You guys do a good job of that, so keep it up. Impress me, impress him, make me look good. Okay, so the first thing that happens is when all these new people come in, well, first of all, when Spain comes in, and remember Columbus makes a big mess of everything. He's not a good administrator, and the crown really wants control of what's going on. So they decide that what they are going to do is make sure that in order to go further exploring, you have to have a contract with the government. The contract states explicitly where you're going to go, what you're going to do when you get there, how much money, always about money, about how much money the crown's going to get, and then how much money you can take after that. So one of the first things that the crown does is, a board here that you can all see. Can you guys on that side see this? Okay. It's called Capitulation. That's the contract that you sign to be able to go out and explore the Crown's lands. Within that, you have to have it on the, spell it right. Switch from Spanish, it's English to Spanish here. That's right, adelantado. An adelantado, which means to go forward. In Spanish, adelante means to go forward. So adelantado means to go forward. So the first thing you do in this contract is you propose, you give them an adelantado. This is where I want to go. So, Ponce de Leon says, okay, I want to go to Puerto Rico. I know we're making slaving raids there, but I really want to make a settlement there, and this is what I want to do. So he sends that off. That gets approved by the Crown, and then once that's approved, then you have to sign the contract for all the things that happen during your adelantado as you're going forward. So how much, what you're going to do with that property, what you're going to do with all those things, and most of all, how much money is coming out of it. The Crown always gets their quinto, which is 1/5. They get 1/5 of everything. So if you find any gold there, the Crown automatically gets 1/5 of that. Find diamonds, emeralds, pearls, tobacco, whatever it is that you find, the Crown gets at least 1/5 of it, no less than 1/5 of that. If you build up a settlement and you extract taxes, or if you build a port and you're getting custom taxes and things like that, the Crown gets 1/5 of everything that you bring in, at the very least. So that they're pulling that right off the top. That's your excise tax. That's it. It's taken automatically from the Crown. What you want to negotiate in this capitulación is that that's it. That's all the Crown gets. Some of the good negotiators, that is all that happens, but a lot of people, it's like more like half of what they find is taken by the Crown, because they work with negotiators. So I don't know what I'm going to find. I don't care. I just want to go explore. Well, great, you explored, and now it's going to the Crown. Yes.
So for settlement taxes, is that every year or just that first year?
Every year. Every year. This is an annual tax. So the other thing that you want to negotiate in your capitulación, in your contract, is I just had it in my head. Capital improvements. So you want to build a port, right? You want to build a town. Well, what do towns have? They have roads, they have bridges, they have churches, they have town halls, they have, you want to dredge the port, and you want to build a wharf. Those are capital improvements, right? You want to build a fort to protect your wharf. Who's going to pay for that? In the capitulación, you do. If you just took it off the rack and signed your name, everything goes to the Crown, and the Crown doesn't have to pay for anything, right? So what you want to also negotiate in there is how much the Crown is going. Do you want the Crown to build the church? Do you want the Crown to help you with dredging the port? Do you want what parts of government? Where do you want the government to come in and help you pay for it? Because if you don't negotiate it, all of your profit is going to go towards building a town. So think of it like a little Sim City thing. You want the money to be coming from somewhere besides your own pockets. So this is all part of that. So the Crown is really excited, right? They've figured out a way to extract a whole lot of money. At the very least, they're going to extract 1/5 of whatever people find. And if they can, get people not to read the fine print, it could be even more. Right? So this is a good thing for the Crown. It also is a control mechanism so that they know who is in charge. We're giving you a governorship, but when we give you this governorship, it means something, right? You've got to control it, you've got to administrate it, you've got to figure out how to collect those taxes, because we're going to take the taxes whether, one way or the other. We're going to get those taxes, and if you don't pay the taxes, then we own it. So, you might think that just because you didn't sign this thing, you're getting away with it. The only person who got away with not signing a capitulation is Cortez. And that's because he stole the contract from the then governor of Cuba, who had actually done all the exploring at the Yucatan, knew what he wanted to do, sent the Adelantado in, and the crown was like, oh, that's cool, that's where all the gold is. We finally found the source of all the gold that we knew about. He had that, he had the contract, and Cortez, a week before Velazquez was supposed to set off, he steals 3/4 of his army, almost all of his ships, and heads over to Mexico. So he's the only one who got away with it. Everyone else was charged for it. So you would pay dearly if you did something like that. I'm not quite sure why. I've never been able to figure out how Cortez got away with it. But anyway, okay. So now that you've got the Spanish out there exploring and finding lands and making settlements, other countries want to come in and do this as well. Spain is like, well, we can't keep you out of there, although we would dearly love to keep you out of here. We can't keep you out, so what we're going to do is force you to get a contract from us, right? So in order to trade, do any kind of business in the Americas, you have to go through the House of Contracts. So the House of Contracts is built in 1503. It's the House of Trade. This is the beginning of controlling the trade in the West Indies. And the contract that you get, so much like the Adelantado for the explorers, the business contract that you get is called an asiento. So if you want to do business, you get an asiento. And that can be, you can be Spanish for this, Italian, Dutch, German, whatever if you're doing business with the Spanish in the Americas, you need a license. Okay?
Oh, so it's a license.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's a license to trade.
So it's like a permit, so to speak?
A permit, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is what they want, but there's only one place you can get it. In 1503, that's Seville. So you literally have to sail into Spain to get this license to trade. You have to come to Spain. The river, the Guadalquivir River, empties out in Cadiz. You go up from the main port up to Seville, and that's where you get this. Yes.
Could other nationalities possibly get this get a permit, or was it strictly allowed?
No, this was for this was anybody.
For Portuguese, English, anybody?
Portuguese, the British, yes.
Okay.
Everybody has to get this. And again, it's the way to control trade. So once we know who has these permits, then you know who's legally trading, right? This makes you legal. If you don't have that, you're illegal. Which is why we do this before we talk about pirates, right? So this is the way that you legally trade with the Spanish in Spanish territories, is to have this asiento. You must have this permit to do business, license to do business in the Americas. The problem is that there's only one place where you can legally get it, Seville, and then it drops out to Cadiz, which is the main port, but it's in Spain. So you have to sail to Spain to get your original permit, and then you can sail to the Americas. Again, it's a way of control, right? It's not a mail-in thing, right? We want to see who you are, see you in person, give you that stamp of approval, and then you can trade with us. Very important for them. This is how they do business with every country. So when the Portuguese start bringing slaves or not the Portuguese, I'm sorry, the Dutch start bringing slaves into Spanish America, they are granted an exclusive right. So they go in, they're like, look, we know you need slaves. We're pretty good at this. We've taken over the Portuguese roots. We can supply you with this. We are the best suppliers of this. We got the best boats. We got the best business people. All that stuff. So they have a representative. The Dutch have a representative who goes to Seville and says, "We want the exclusive right to sell slaves in the Americas," and they get an asiento to be able to do that. And to legally purchase a slave, you should be only purchasing it from the Dutch state.
And so that involves, so now to be a Dutch trader, you have to get approval from the Dutch company from the Dutch thing to get.
But that approval comes from the Spain, yes.
Yeah, okay, so.
Yes, yeah. But if you're French or English or somebody else and you want to sell slaves in the Americas to the Spanish, then you either work through the Dutch West India Company or you do it illegally. Because the Dutch have the exclusive license, right? So either you work with them or you're working against both them and the Spanish, right?
So there's legal slave trade and illegal slave trade?
It's a business, right? So there's always like legal business and the under the table business. So this is what's going on. One of the problems is that Spain can't enforce this though. This is a big bathtub, right? So they're having trouble. They start these patrol fleets to try and do that, to protect, like a Coast Guard, to check ships and run up on ships and board them and say you actually have a license to be doing this, so that you're not waiting until they get into port to check. So you have these little corvettes that are little small boats that kind of speed around the Caribbean, checking in on to make sure that your ship is legal to be trading in there. The Spanish think that whole bathtub, the whole Caribbean bathtub, is theirs. So they feel they have the right to heel towards you and to make you prove that you should be there. So they try it, but they just don't have the numbers, right? I mean, they don't really. Their fleet is small, and pretty soon it's going to be destroyed, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to happen to the poor Spanish.
So don't waste your money on a license, right?
Well, yes and no. It becomes a gamble, right? So if you are caught, then there are big fines. Your property can be confiscated, but you can gamble that you'll not be caught. I mean, because
make more money off not having an asiento.
Yes, because remember you get a
all
quinto
those-
on it
yeah, you don't have
goes.
to pay all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
quinto on it goes.
But basically, then you're just you're technically a pirate, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so yeah.
Exactly. So the problem is if you don't do this, then you're smuggling, right? You're a smuggler. And so that becomes the issue. So the Spanish are very keen to make sure you're giving them their quinto. As Mark says, that's 20%, right? They want their 20%. And if you don't do that, then they can take everything. So you're gambling. If you don't get that asiento, you're gambling that 20% or everything. It's like which one's worse. So. The other problem that they're having is because they don't have these numbers to protect, is that people are picking them off, right? They're letting the Spanish do the hard work, mine for the gold, grow the tobacco, whatever it is. They're letting the Spanish do all that work, and then they send little, people out. They license people to go out and steal from the Spanish. So, here comes the tobacco ship, and they take that.
Who does? The Dutch?
The
Or
Dutch,
anybody?
the English, anybody who doesn't have a license, right? So
Uh-huh.
this is what you can do without a license. You can wait for somebody else to do all the work and then take that and then take it on home and make your money. So this becomes a big problem for the Spanish quite rapidly. So that by 1543, the Spanish are already like, whoa, we're losing way too much. this is not working. So instead of having like individual ships come leave from Spain and come to the Americas, or leave from the Americas and go to Spain, you know, and being out on your own kind of thing, they say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to consolidate our shipments. So instead of UPS sending out individual little, you know, brown trucks, they're like, we'll put all the trucks together and we'll go at one time and be protected, because we don't have that much protection either, so we'll just consolidate all our protection around this one major shipment, and we'll do it that way. So that starts in 1543. So you can see how quickly other countries were getting in on the game and trying to steal from the Spanish. And this convoy system lasted for 150 years. So it was something that they really needed. There are 2 annual fleets going both ways, so 4 shipments, 2 coming from Europe and 2 going to Europe.
I mean, isn't it exceedingly risky to put all your, to literally put all your eggs in one basket? Basically, 2 baskets?
That's what they were tossing up. It was risky for them to be sending ships singly without protection. You have just one Spanish galleon with all the, you know, silver from Libya, and you know, then you've got 5 ships coming at it, you know. So if that galleon is in the midst of a bunch of other ships and then surrounded by some other ships, then you know, it's not so bad. And actually, they only lost 2 ships. I mean, two convoys in the 150.
Convoys?
Yeah, they only lost 2 convoys in the 150 years.
Where'd they go?
One, right, yeah. One convoy was destroyed by a hurricane, because it goes in November, which is not a brilliant time to be sailing. But that only one was completely destroyed by a hurricane is phenomenal in 150 years. And the other one was hijacked.
English?
No, it was actually the Dutch. We'll get to them.
Oh,
I have a slide for that.
Wait, how many like ships typically were like in one of these? Because there's a lot in that
Hundreds.
picture. Oh wow.
More than that picture.
More than that picture. Yeah, it was a large thing. This is that's actually the Spanish Armada, but that's the whole, which was not very good.
Would they like crash into their own ships sometimes? Because that looks like a mayhem.
Yeah.
Well, that's the Spanish Armada. That's the
That was mayhem.
That was mayhem.
But like on the other, you know.
Yeah, but no, they wouldn't usually. What you might see is because you have so many ships going that they would lose pieces of the convoy. So, you know, a ship might run aground, or it might get blown off course, or if there is a hurricane, you might lose some of the, you know, exterior ships, things like that. So it was, for them, it was a safer bet, because it seems like a whole lot more when you're losing, you know, one and here and here and here, but if you put it all together and you're losing just a couple on the fringes, not as big a loss. And you can, you know, it's easier to insure a big lot than it is piecemeal kind of thing. So it was much better for the Spanish in this way. So that's the good stuff. That's the good administrative financial reign that Spain has, minus 1588 when they lose their entire navy. But we have some problems in Spain. This is it was a sneak picture, because you aren't supposed to take pictures in the Heraldia in the Seville Cathedral. So it's one of those like pictures. This is Columbus's tomb. His casket. One of them. Because there are 3 that I know of. There's one in Santo Domingo, in the lighthouse there. There's this one, and there's one more. I can't remember where that was. Yes.
So where is he?
Yes. That is the question.
That's weird.
About 4 years ago, they actually, well, no, it was longer than that, because they built, about 20 years ago, they, Santo Domingo built a lighthouse. It's the Columbus Lighthouse, El Faro Colón. that they built in Santo Domingo. And they were like, we're building this because we're going to put Columbus's body underneath it. And Spain was like, how? We have it. that might be a little difficult. And they were like, no, he's here. He's on this island that he was administrator of. He's right here. And the Columbus's family was like, really? Because we thought he was here at the third place that I can't remember. And so there were these 3 places that were like, we have him. So every one of these places contributed a piece of bone for DNA. And they found out that he was like one of those saints, that kind of got piecemealed out. He was in 2 of those locations. He wasn't actually where the family thought he was. But he was in Seville. Most of him was in Seville, and then there was like a leg bone in Santo Domingo.
So they were right too.
They were right, but then Spain was like, wait, we want that leg bone back. So they had to get the leg bone back. So when you go there, it says they have a piece of him, but it's like a saint relic, kind of. That's not really there.
So strange.
So is he where is like the rest of him?
It's all in Seville. Most
of them is in Seville. We don't. I mean, it's like one of those saint relics, right? It's like
Yeah.
who knows where he is. So the most of him is in there.
Did they sample all the bones in the casket,
No.
or just?
No.
Oh, so they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, they only sent a piece of DNA, right? So, and Santo Domingo didn't even have a full skeleton, so they could have sent a piece of it that wasn't, and it might have come back as no, it's negative. And it might be also that it's a relative of Columbus, right? Because his grandson was the first governor of the island. So there's Colon blood in Santo Domingo, so it might not actually.
And that third location could have a piece of him, and they just didn't.
And they didn't hit the right part. Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. Because the problem with that is you destroy whatever it is. Are there any scientists?
No, I just know that they destroy the
so,
sample.
yeah,
and
when
take
you do a DNA sample, you actually destroy whatever it is. So you don't want to be sending the entire skeleton because not good. So it's just a little piece of it, of the skeleton that you do. So that was part of the problem. So that's why I put this as the problems for Spain, right? I mean, it's we don't even know what's going on with our own people here. So the weak Habsburg, the rulers are the Habsburgs.
That's an unfortunate photo.
What is that?
That's a hook-nosed
That is a
Habsburg.
Habsburg.
Ooh.
That is a Habsburg.
Oh my lord.
Yeah.
That's incest.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this is called inbreeding at its finest.
Holy.
Yeah, this is those cute little pug dogs or my little Burmese cat. They have the little flat faces that are bred that way. This is what happens. And after a while, pugs they have mandibular problems. They can't breathe. All these. My cat has breathing problems.
That's what
And
purebreds
they
are.
bred these little flat faces, right? Their problem is a little bit of the opposite. It's a mandibular problem. A mandible is this bone. And with each successive generation, it gets further and further and further out. This poor guy, Charles II, who's the last of this Habsburg line.
That's a dude. I can see.
That's
On the left, right?
King Charles alone.
Wait, that. Oh.
He had.
Sorry, Charles. Wow.
Yeah, wait till I tell you the rest of the story.
Oh, keep going.
He had a royal masticator.
A what?
A what?
A royal masticator.
Someone that from?
Because his
Oh,
mouth
Jesus.
doesn't.
It's not functional?
It was
Yeah,
not.
it doesn't
was,
look very functional.
It was. The lower jaw was so much further forward than the top of the jaw that his molars wouldn't line up.
Oh my.
So there was no way to chew food, right?
So his teeth ended way out here.
He got a real hard underbite.
Yeah.
I could pull him off.
So
I
he
have a
could, I
friend
mean,
who
he
had
couldn't
that.
chew anything. If he was able to eat, it was, liquid form. Everything came liquid.
That's so nasty.
So there was a royal masticator. One, it serves two purposes. One, it's the taster, right? So he's not poisoned. And two, it liquefies it. So, because they didn't have, oyster blenders or anything like that. So this is how you blended the food.
But not oysters though, right?
Mother birding like
Oysters?
Oyster is a type of blender.
Yeah, I thought she said oyster.
I bet, yeah.
I thought she said oyster too. I was
I'm
like,
sure
what?
my-
Imagine how
like a
slimy that would be.
But you could eat oysters.
Okay.
He could?
He just slip them
Don't
down.
eat it.
Oh.
Okay, so he's the last of the line. But this is showing you, this is the second one in the line. His father was Charles I, and he was the Holy Roman Emperor, Lord of everything. So they started with this. But this is my favorite thing. This is like a soap opera. He is married to Queen Elizabeth's sister. Her mother,
It's not Catherine of Aragon, is it?
yes,
Oh,
it is. Her mother is Catherine of Aragon, who would have been his father's grandmother, great aunt.
Oh, that's fine.
Catherine of Aragon was Isabel's sister. Isabel, our Isabel. Ian's sister. It was Ian's sister. So her mother was Isabel's sister, and Isabel's sister was his grandmother.
Ooh.
So they're.
Wait, Isabel was his grandmother?
Yes.
So they're.
Oh.
No, actually, his great grandmother, because his
That's a little bit better.
his great grandmother. So yeah, his great
No harm, no
grandmother.
foul.
Who in between that?
It could be worse.
But who's married to who in between that? I'm guessing they didn't marry outside the family.
No, because they're all. I mean, all the royal families are,
Yeah.
kind of
Yep.
mixed up. So, I mean, that's why you had the hemophilia with the Russian, I mean, they're all just totally related. So this tells you two things, right? That her mother was Catherine of Aragon. That also, she's Catholic. She is diehard Catholic. When's the Reformation? You guys remember that?
That was happening here.
1595. Well, it's from 95.
Wait, no.
It was 95 Theses, so you got
That was actually married.
15 you got right.
15-4?
Is it 15? No,
1562.
1532.
I'm looking it up.
Higher or lower?
What they do here?
1608.
Piece of Bond Bill 1565. I don't know
Lower.
what they do right now.
1572.
And stuff like that. 1517.
That was the.
That's what
the
you
95 Theses.
That's the 95 Theses.
Yeah.
So the Protestant Reformation begins in 1517 when Martin Luther is like, he's not trying to break away from the church.
No, he's just like,
Yeah, we got problems. Let me tell you, we got 95 problems here that I can think of off the top of my head.
and most of them are about money.
Right. Yeah, stop taking money, stop asking us for money so that we can die, kind of things. Just little things like that.
Purgatory's not real.
Well, he didn't say purgatory wasn't real. He was just like, you shouldn't have to buy yourself out.
That's the whole
And you
point.
can't really buy yourself.
Yes.
What a hustle.
So yeah. So 1517, right? And then we've got Henry, her father, right?
The one that killed all his wives?
Yeah. Well, they died.
Yeah. In an Arawak kind of way.
They didn't all die. Some of them survived.
Two survived. So so her mother is Catherine of Aragon. She's Catholic. She's like, her country has just reconquested, a whole territory to be Catholic, right? So with this marriage, this alliance was supposed to solidify a kingdom. If you look at these dates, right, she becomes queen in 1553, and is queen until she dies in 1558.
I thought that was when they were born. This guy.
No, these are their reigns. These are their reigns. He becomes king. He takes over from his father, who just abdicates. He's like, I'm done with this. In 1556, and he dies in 1598.
So how was she queen before that?
She's not queen before that. She's queen in these years.
Okay.
She follows her father, who was Henry VIII.
Okay.
Okay. So think about this. Her father divorced her mother, and in order to divorce her mother, he also has to divorce the church. Right?
That's right, because if you were devoted Catholic, you didn't believe in it.
Right.
Well, it had to be.
Her mother fights this to the bitter end. She's like, I am married to him. I'm not annulling it. Annulling it says it never happened. That means she's illegitimate. No, not doing that. She fought it the whole way. It was never annulled. So she's legitimate. But he decides that he wants this divorce. So what better way to do that than to make your own church? And in my church, you can get divorced. So he builds his own church, the Church of England, the Anglican Church, right? And from that point on, we've got Anglicans in control, right? So it's the Protestant thing going on here. He's like, I've got options. I can do this. He dies. His oldest living relative is her.
Yeah, but she isn't.
Well, it's the son, right? And
They
the
get
son
another
Well,
guy.
actually, he is after her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he was too young, and he was in France. James, he was too young. He was in France. So she's the oldest. James was a baby. I know one of the Catholics I don't remember whose kid it was, but it was one of his later wives. So she is the oldest. She's a majority. And they have at that point a thing where women can secede. So it's not an issue. She becomes, the problem is she's not Anglican. And yeah, she has no interest in being it. So this is our Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Right? So she's like, I'm turning y'all back to the Lord. Right? She spends her reign flipping it. These two, right, make a really powerful unit, Catholic-wise. Right? He comes from the Holy Catholic, people here, and he's tying the marriage was to ally with that, knowing she was going to become queen. Now we have this alliance. This is why that picture from before happens, right? The Spanish Armada. What year was the Spanish Armada? Top of their head.
1542.
Yep.
1518.
1550.
Let's look at their ages here.
Isn't it 1563?
No, but you're keep going.
1590.
Not so far.
1570.
66.
Yeah, no, it's
15. I don't know.
You guys are so cute.
1554.
There we go.
1588.
Okay. So, again, what do these numbers tell you? She's already dead. Right?
Yeah, she died early.
So who's her sister?
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Elizabeth the First.
Good, proper Protestant.
She is her father's daughter. Right? She took on the new, because her mother is the reason why this one is divorced, right? So you've got these two sisters at religious odds. he has this tie here. So while she is queen and they're married, notice when they get married, right? 1554. So she's already queen.
Which one?
Okay. She's very Catholic.
This one's Catholic.
This one is very Catholic. Okay? So they get married to solidify the Catholicism in Spain. I mean, in England, right? That's the reason for this marriage, is to make England Catholic again. Right? Very much about that. They actually, how many times did they actually meet? Twice. They meet for their wedding, 1554. So they hadn't met. I mean, this is the way marriages work in high-ranking marriages work anyway. You didn't have to know them. So he comes to England in 1554, and they meet. It's unclear whether the marriage was consummated at that point. He only comes over one more time in 1556, I think. And it's again unclear whether that was consummated. So they don't have any kids. So when she dies, he marries again. But when she dies, this relationship and the Catholicizing, making England Catholic again, comes to a screeching halt. Because baby sister comes in and she's like, okay, we're done with that. That was a nice experiment. Not gonna happen. So she becomes then, so during this time, of course, England and Spain are working together, right? The trade issues aren't issues. They're basically one country at this point. When she dies and Elizabeth takes over, she's like, playtime is over. She goes at her brother-in-law. I mean, just it literally is war. And so that's when the Spanish Armada happens. Is Philip is like, see the dates here? So Philip is like, oh, I am so tired of my little sister. I've got to go and teach her a lesson. And so he goes in and little sister-in-law.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want to question it because of what we had just
Sister-in-law.
been discussing. So.
But younger, right? She's younger than him. So he comes over to teach her a lesson. She actually stands up and is like, I'll fight, right? One of the reasons that the Spanish Armada went, why the English win the Spanish Armada is, it's not numbers. Spain had the numbers. They were the largest naval force in Europe. One is sheer luck with weather. The Spanish Armada runs into a storm. And it's happened right when the English when they connect. The other is because Elizabeth was really savvy, and she's like, I know my little navy is not gonna make it. All things being equal, not happening. So she goes to the Dutch. Says, had a little problem with Philip. I know you guys don't like him either, because the Dutch have this perpetual thing against the Spanish.
Didn't the Spanish rule over them for like a while?
For a long time. And he is actually fighting the Dutch on his northern flanks because, A, the Protestant thing, they're some of the first Protestants, and he's trying to keep things Catholic. And they also, it's a foreign territory, right? So it's, he's trying to keep this foreign territory. So she writes to the Dutch and is like, could you help out? Could you send some? And they have actually a pretty big navy and a pretty strong navy. And so they come down. So it's weather is one thing that helps, and the other thing that helps is that she gets reinforcements from the Dutch. So without the help from the Dutch, even with the weather, she might not have won. It's the Dutch numbers that really help her to win.
Did they actually use fire ships and everything like they say? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can see them in this picture. You can see up in that, up here, and like they would set things on fire too. There's one sinking there. The Dutch. Elizabeth was fine with burning her own ships if it meant that it would, get rid of the other ones. And some of them were demasted already from the storm, and they weren't, the rudders were broken and all these kinds of things. They were all messed up from the storm, so they were kind of like sitting ducks as well. So this is an issue that relationship is really important because it just sets up this animosity between Spain and England that's going to go from the English Channel across to the Caribbean. Right? Okay. Then we've got the health issues. So this is the last of our robust Habsburgs. He's the last guy who has full facilities and can actually rule. The rest of them are kind of.
I wouldn't say full facilities can't chew.
No, that's Charles. Philip.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about Philip. Philip he's pretty virile, and so he's. The rest of them are sterile, and there's just there's no hope. So they die out. The Habsburgs die out. Another issue is that they've got all of this territory, right? So how do you keep control of it? Those asientos making everybody get a license isn't working as well as they thought. And especially with Elizabeth coming into power, she could care less about a license. She doesn't care. In fact, she's going to counter that and give licenses to her people to rob these guys. So she's like, oh, so I have to have a license to trade with you? Oh, okay. I'll have a license. I'll build a license to steal from you. So,
This is her being petted.
yeah.
Petty.
Yeah. Well, you've been queen before. You know that.
It gets to your head a little bit.
We did some role playing, and they all took roles. And was queen for a day.
She looks like a queen.
Yes, the hair for it.
Yeah. So luscious.
Where did you get that?
I appreciate it.
That's my
hers.
my doctoral patent, my PhD.
Oh, okay.
Oh, shit.
I was wondering that. I didn't want to ask
She
you.
had a
but,
PhD for 45 minutes. Killer.
Okay, so this is going to have a problem. I mean, Spain is already having issues in Spain, right? They're having problems controlling Spain because of the leader there is dopey, right? So there's not much going on there. So as really Spain after Philip is being controlled by regions, being controlled by the council, like our Elizabeth had. There are advisors that really are filling this role, and there's no central person to say, I'm king. Darn it, let's do it this way. So there's a whole lot of that going on. Communication back and forth. There's no postal system per se, so things get lost in the mix, and what are we doing? And it takes months. You write a letter, and it takes months for a response to come, and by that time you're like, I figured it out. I got it. Thanks for the reply, but we're beyond that now. So this is an issue, and so what ends up happening in the Americas is folks are like, yeah, we can handle this on our own. It takes you guys way too long to get us supplies. It takes you guys way too long to answer our queries. We'll figure it out on our own. And they're finding they're doing pretty good administrating without the chief administrator. So you've got things like the capitulation and the quinto. Those kinds of things are going to happen. They're just going to happen. But other things that come up. The colonies are like, we got that. We figured that out. Okay. And so you have this loosening of the tie between the mother country and its empire, because the empire is like, we need you. Why do we need you? Kind of thing. Another thing is we've got this influx of, because the economy is so bad. In Spain, there's nothing for people to do. They've been passing out titles to people, so like knighthoods to people just willy-nilly. And it's a consequence of the Americas, right? So one of the things that, for your service, we'll just give you this. And in the Americas, you might have land, but then that translates to your family in Spain of a title, right? So you might not have land in Spain, but you have that title. So suddenly there's like this plethora, this huge number of people with titles and nothing to back it up.
There's inflation too, right?
There's inflation. That quinto that they're getting, I mean, Hanover Fist stuff coming in, the money coming in to Spain. Where is it going though?
Into, well, a lot of it's going to the royal treasury, like the royal. Is it?
It goes through the treasury.
Okay.
Does it go back into the colonies?
No, they would be really happy if it went back to the colonies.
War effort.
War effort. Remember I talked about the Dutch? The Dutch, they're fighting the Netherlands. They are also fighting, the Habsburgs have a huge empire. Their empire skirts all the way to Austria and actually to the Hungary, Turkey border. They have territory in the Mediterranean. So some of Italy is not one solidified place until 1846. So it's like a whole bunch of little places, and some of them are Spanish. So there's like, Spain has like places all over Europe. It has the Philippines. It has the Americas. So they're fighting to keep that territory. So it's going to those patrol fleets, right? It's going to protecting all of those major borders. It's going to building statues to, whatever monarch wants a statue made of them. It's going to finance the trade. You can't make money without money, kind of thing. And what the Spanish were finding was that in order to finance expeditions, to finance mining, to finance to charter these convoys, right? It costs money. That money that they don't have a central bank. They don't have a central bank. So in order to get the money, they have to borrow. The money comes out of the treasury and goes to the Netherlands. It goes to the Flemish, the Belgians, and it goes to England. Mm-hmm.
Wait, so I thought you said they were fighting the Dutch.
So what?
But the Dutch have a strong financial center.
And so why are they giving money?
Because Spain has no financial center. They have the money. What do you, if it just is sitting in your...
Oh, so they needed somewhere to keep it then.
They needed somewhere to keep it, and they needed somewhere to siphon it through. Yes, to invest it. So it does no good if it's just sitting in your thing. But so if it's just sitting in the Royal Treasury, no good. But in order to finance all these different enterprises that they had, you have to pay it out. The payout has to go through something, right? There's nothing for it to go through in Spain. The things that the financial institutions are in Belgium, are in the Netherlands, are in England.
Why didn't they create one?
That is a very good question. People
Feel
are
like
writing
it-
dissertations about that, trying to figure it out.
Could it be because usually banks were owned by Jews and they didn't
And they
particularly like
kicked
Jews?
them out. There are no more. So the banking institutions that they had under the Moors, under the Moorish Empire, are gone. The financial houses are gone because they kicked them out. Those guys are now in Amsterdam and in Belgium, in Antwerp. So the financial houses, they caused their own problem.
Yeah.
They did. So that's part of it. Another issue is these noble people. It's all title and no backing of it, because that money again goes through everything. So they don't have anywhere to invest their money either. So you have all these people. They're called hidalgos, lower nobles. So it's like somebody just like a sir, you know, it's like knighting, you know, I don't know, sir whoever. Like it means nothing. It's great, sir whoever. But you don't get land, you don't get, you know,
So why were they giving
manor.
this?
Because it was, because
Like-
yeah, wouldn't you want to be sir somebody?
I mean, yeah, but so like, did they get it because of like business or like because of?
Because in the beginning, it's because of exploration, right? So they are part of Pizarro's crew, and they you know, all these guys envelop Peru, and so you were part of that journey. And look what it's done for our empire. So we'll give you your family a title for that. You've done something and built up a business or done something spectacular in one of our colonies somewhere, and so you're given a title for that.
So you get sir.
In
Yeah.
Spanish, it's don or doña.
Yeah.
So it'd be, we actually have a Don Juan here, right? We're Donini.
So it's like, is that why they call Pablo Escobar Don Pablo?
Yes.
Or Doña
I'm Don
Kayla.
Juan.
As soon as I heard it.
Wait there.
Right, I mean,
So that's why they call Pablo Escobar Don Pablo?
Mhm. It's an honorific.
I mean, that's also why there's the monolith out there.
Like in,
So these are Don Lettuce,
Don
Don Lechuga.
Donna Calia.
So
Calisi.
yeah, so it's an honorific. But it's just a title. It doesn't have financial backing. And so what do you do? If you're in Spain, it's harmful actually, right? I mean, so you got all these guys who are like, but I'm wonderful. Why are you, well, you know, what's the problem? You know, and so there's nothing for them to do. So where do they go? They go to the Americas and they start popping around their names, right? I'm Don so-and-so. So they get there, the Cabildo, the town hall gives them an encomienda or an hacienda, depending on what era we're in. It gives them land, they give them people to work it, and then, so this population then is like kind of exported, right? So we export a top level without them having had to work for it, right? They just automatically come to the Americas and suddenly you've got this top strata without it kind of built into a top strata. And that becomes a problem because it consolidates the wealth really quickly in a small number of people.
1%.
Top 1% thing, yeah. It was a little more than 1%, but it's a problem that we still see to this day in Latin America, right? It's like this concentration of wealth at the top and everybody else kind of like bumping up against them and not able to break through that. This is where it starts, is in this time period. Okay? Questions? All right. One of these days I'm gonna have one of our business people come in and actually like tell that in a way that makes more sense than a historian trying to tell you about it. Okay, so where is this wealth coming from that's like going through? Most of it's coming from that mountain. That mountain is still producing silver
Really?
to this day.
Wow. So where is that?
It is in Bolivia. The high plains of Bolivia. Potosi increased Europe's silver reserve 7-fold. So if you had $100 and you invested it, it would be $800. That's higher now.
Wait.
Seven times. So $700.
But I'll take it.
Well, and that was kind of what was happening to Spain too. Like, wait, or are we supposed to get? Oh, right, we can't add. So I was like, they were having a little trouble with that too. But it's so much wealth is coming out of this place. This becomes the focus, right? what's coming out of this mountain is what Elizabeth is going after, it's what the Dutch are going after, it's what the French are going after. Everybody wants what's coming out of this mountain. This is the wealth.
Wow.
So it's, yeah.
Huge thing.
It's 50,000 indigenous, 45,000 Spanish, and there were like 30,000 or something like that other Europeans.
Is that a church on the top of the mountain?
It is, but it isn't. I mean, the mountain is sacred.
Oh.
So.
To the indigenous?
To everybody.
Oh.
Because if there's silver?
Yes.
Right.
So you don't go up to that church?
No, there are churches.
It's not a
that,
church.
No. There's no actual
It's not a
church on
church.
top. There's no actual church on top.
Oh, that's just symbolism.
It's symbolism. Yes.
Oh, okay. That's just.
Yeah. It's
That makes more
symbolism.
sense. I was gonna say, who's gonna lug all that building material up a mountain?
No. But interesting you say that. There are altars inside because the indigenous are like stuck underground, and so there are actual altars and temples. You gotta go around the corner and there's an altar. Protection. It's protection. That's what we're saying. So there are churches altars in the mountain, but there's not one on top of it. Okay, so why is this so, it's increasing everything. This is where all that, remember I was trying to get you guys to figure out where all that money is going to, why it's going to Antwerp and to all those other places. It's paying for these dynastic wars. It's paying for all those little guys who, just kind of hang around. Because the aristocracy, you might just have a title, but all those people with titles are going to hang out together, and you'll have, you guys have heard of it's like Jane Austen, right? So you have all these people with titles and with, supposed wealth, and they're sitting in a room together. They have these week-long hunting parties, you have big feasts and dinners. Somebody's got to pay for that. The state pays for it, right? So the state will will fund you for these things to keep up appearances. Monuments, all these kings have to have monuments. The bureaucracy. So how do you administrate all these people? Those guys have to be paid. And the bureaucracy just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The fight against the Protestants, just all their borders are kind of pockmarked with this. The German Habsburg territory is interspersed with, Lutherans and other Protestant places because neither Germany isn't unified yet and Italy isn't unified. 1846 before Germany and Italy are unified. So they have all these little states that some are Catholic, some are Protestant, they might be right next to each other, and so you have this whole religious war going on. And there is no manufacturing in Spain.
Nothing?
See, this is the questions. So they don't have a bank, they don't have manufacturing.
What are they doing?
Don't they see maybe this is a good thing to do?
Yeah, maybe we should start doing this.
Yeah, don't they see
no one thought of that?
Yeah.
The question arises, how did they get out so far? If they
That's a good question. You are all raising a really good question, and it is because it's a good question. It's because the crown initially is relying on the product from the Americas, right? The Americas is the grab bag. The wealth is in the Americas. They originally expected that to fund everything and to actually make a profit off of it. The problem is they can't make a profit off of it. So they spend more than they bring in. That's a problem.
Sounds like a personal problem to me.
So in order to then fund things, then this is when they go to the finance houses in Antwerp and Amsterdam and London, which means, is that my space Catholic Empire funding?
Yeah.
They didn't mean to. In the end, they make Elizabeth stronger. They make the Dutch stronger. They make the little German states stronger. Because this money is just kind of.
They know where to put it. What
They kinda
industries
make their own
did they
bank.
have going for them besides like?
Had the Navy and that was it.
Well,
Yeah, they
maybe
didn't
it gets
have-
destroyed through TD. And so yeah, they had this huge navy, right? It gets destroyed. There's not enough lumber in Spain to rebuild it. They go to Portugal. They go to Italy. Those are the two main places that they go to. So they're paying the Portuguese to rebuild their ships. Okay. So this, I mean, this it's just like there's nothing. You would think they, they had cattle. Cattle was a big thing during the Reconquista. No, because all the cattle ranchers are now in the Americas.
There's better land over there, right?
There's better land, there's more land, and they can own land.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a urbanization movement, so people are moving off of the land into cities. There's only so much you can put in a city, right? Especially in the 1600s. So it was 15 and 1600s. There's not that much going on. So the land that should be cultivated is not being cultivated because the population is shrinking and urbanizing or going off to the Americas. So where you should be sheep ranching, horse raising, or whatever it's called, and cattle breeding, that's not happening in Spain anymore. So there's no wool, there's nobody to work the fields for cotton and flax. So there's no clothing industry. So the peasants, they'll wear like rough cloth and stuff, but if you're wealthy, right, or supposed to be wealthy, you don't want to be wearing half sack, right? I mean, that's just not right. But that means you definitely have to import silk. Everybody has to import silk. But lace, there's no cottage industry for lace, so they go to Belgium, has the prettiest lace. It really does have pretty lace. But that's expensive and it's somebody else's economy that you're funding. To get fine spun cotton and muslin, England or the Dutch or the Italians.
So it just seems like they did a lot of stuff that they could have done better.
Yeah.
So they basically just forgot about their own economy.
Yeah.
And their own.
Well, they thought their own economy would be funded by the empire. Their funds to other economies. In order to get that, to extract it from the empire, that was the step they missed. They went from A to G and missed letters in the middle. So nice idea, and theoretically, that's how Venice got rich, that's how Genoa got rich, that's how Barcelona got rich, was, that trade. And they're like, and we have trade exponentially, so we should be really rich. But they missed that step of how do you extract that wealth? How do you pay for that wealth to be extracted? And that's expensive. And then you add all those other things like dynastic wars and all that other stuff on top of it, and then you end up outputting more than you're inputting. Okay? I still think it's stupid, so I can understand. I'm just like, somebody needed a really good advisor, and didn't get it. So, yeah. So we talked about some of these things, the loss of control, right? So it's just out of their hands at this point, right? They've lost control of everything. Then we have the church issues, the Protestant versus the Catholic issue, and then within the Catholic Church, there are issues too about how Catholic, you're not Catholic enough, kind of thing. The Inquisition is ramping up, so it's like another reason people are fleeing Spain is because it's like I'm not Catholic enough. How can I not be Catholic enough? And the Inquisition is just so you leave, you get away from it. So England is just a thorn in their side. And those privateers, which is partly England and then everybody else. So what we started off with that idea of those convoys is because of these privateers. Privateer is a pirate, the Spanish. That's just a nice way for the Spanish thing is just a nice way of saying pirate. Privateer is what Elizabeth did. She said, oh, I'll just give them a license to steal from you. So a privateer is a pirate with a license to steal.
Sounds like a pretty good gig.
It's called a letter of marque, M-A-R-Q-U-E, and you'll read about it in the pirate thing. But that's all it is. That's all it is you know, you just have a license from another government to steal from the Spanish. It is always against the Spanish. Everybody kind of gangs up on the Spanish.
Were the privateers taxed, or were they?
It depends on your contract.
Or were they just like told to basically pay the English economy as well as?
Yeah, it depends on your contract. Your letter tells you what part of your spoils goes to the crown. Yeah, yeah. Nothing is 20%. I mean, 20% is a lot. One of the things that that happens is that they form what are called joint stock companies. It starts in the Netherlands, and they're like mutual aid societies. So we would all pool money. So, you know, I might put in $20, you might put in $5, you might put in 15, you know, Celia might have 100 to put in, you know, so we have, you know, everybody kind of puts in money, and you then fund a privateer or an expedition, right? Either one. I mean, an expedition could include privateers too.
Oh, okay, wait a minute.
So, but your goal is to make money from that, right? I put $20 in. I don't want just my $20 back. I want
60.
Yeah,
10%
whatever.
return or something.
I want a return on that. And that's what the joint stocks were, was it's like you're pulling in your money, and you might just have a little bit of money, but if somebody runs into a Spanish ship, then that money becomes way more than $20, right? So this is what you're always hoping for, that big haul. So let me get to that real fast, because that's.
It's like a game, right?
It is a game.
Yeah,
it's
see
a
the Spanish
fun
show.
game. Let me bump ahead really to when this works really well.
Yeah.
So, this is the most famous of the joint stock companies. This is the first company to have an asiento from Spain to trade in slaves. So the Dutch West India Company has the exclusive right to trade in slaves. But it's not just that, right? So this is owned by the government, and in the Netherlands it's a little different than some of the other kingdoms, because the king is not in control. It's a House of Commons that kind of runs all of this stuff. So it is government owned, but it's a government as much as you can be in the 1600s. It's a government of the people, right? So it's a group of businessmen, basically, who kind of control all of this. The Dutch West India Company is an investment company for trade in the Caribbean. Right? There's also a Dutch East India Company that trades in Sumatra and Indonesia and all those places. So this is for the West, Dutch West India Company. They make most of their money by picking off Spanish ships.
Even though they were working with the Spanish?
Not the Dutch.
Oh.
Well, they
I
were
thought they had
investing in them,
this-
but not
yeah. Okay.
directly into them.
This is part of the problem for Spain, right? It's like, it really is confusing, but the money trail.
It all leads back. Either the money indirectly goes to goes through the banks to the country, or
or it comes
It
off
goes-
the ship.
It goes to a good investment, which is stealing from them.
Yes.
So,
So why did they still get the contract? Why didn't they rescind it?
They actually eventually lose it, but the group they lose it to is the French. And then the French lose it to the British,
What's
the Royal African Company. Yeah. So, I mean, none of the companies that have this exclusive right are, you know, like desirable partners. But how else are you gonna get the product? Right. So you need, it's like the lesser of two evils.
what you could do.
So this is a really, I mean, it's a really lucrative company. And people are putting in money, but nothing, there's never been like a really big thing, you know, it's like, you know, one person hits the you know, the slots one time and one, you know, another group will hit another time, but nothing really, you know, hefty and like life-changing. Until this captain named, and I love this name, Piet Hein. And when I was finally in Amsterdam and heard it said correctly, I was like, oh, that's even better. It sounds really great.
That's the guy's name, or is that?
Piet Hein.
Okay.
Piet, it's Peter. Piet is Peter in Dutch.
You know.
He organizes an expedition, and he says, okay guys, what I'd really like to do is, you know, I'd like to steal pick off a couple ships, but I'd really like to do is attack the convoy. We're like, that's tough. That's never happened before. Why don't you just, you know, stick to some of the outer ships and do that? And he's like, okay, but I could do that, and so why don't you invest in me, and I'll bring you home lots of money. So even just with what you guys want. But he really had it in his mind. He does this for a few years, you know, kind of he's funded to go and steal from the Spanish. In 1628, he hits Hader. He is hovering around. His thing is to like hover around where the convoy consolidates, and it always consolidates in the same place. So what has to happen with the convoy is that all the merchant ships, all the trade ships, and all the treasure ships all come to one central location. They all come to Havana Bay. And you have to wait for the time of the convoy to happen. So, you know, you might, if one of the shipments was in April, right? So if you missed the November shipment, you go from Caracas to Havana and you put your stuff in a storehouse until the April shipment, and then you reload it onto a ship to go out in April. It's inefficient, but remember, it's protected.
Right,
Yeah, this isn't, I mean, the likelihood of your stuff getting where it needs to go.
The pirates also raided colonies, right?
Yes. Yeah, so you actually didn't want it at your location because you know, these privateers are coming in and, you know, bombing up the
Francis Drake.
Yes, Francis Drake. You know, so it's the safest. It's like Fort Knox, right? It's the safest place to put your money, or your goods, or whatever. So everybody knows that, you know, by the time we get to April and by the time we get to November, this place is going to be bumping. I mean, there's tons of stuff here, right? So, and that's why you have privateers just like hanging out, you know, in this area here. They're like picking off people who are like rushing to get to the, you know, to the shipment before it leaves. And so you've got all these, this is where the privateers all come out, it's right in this area. So Piet's hanging out in this area, and he's like, I think I'm here on the right day. What he ends up doing is blowing in the Spanish convoy and navy because usually the Navy comes out ahead, right? And so that they can protect the convoy as it comes out. He got there on a day when everybody was in harbor. He blocks it off, and then when the Navy comes out to try and fight, he's in control really of the tactics of that. So he's able to destroy the Spanish Navy that was there, and then go in and capture the convoy in harbor. He got oh my God, if you had put in money into that particular expedition, you were set for many lifetimes. That was the bonanza. He is the only person to capture an entire convoy.
Wait, so it's just one?
No, I mean he had.
I was about to say, like, how many people did
But he
he?
didn't have that many ships. It was less than 10 ships that he had.
Okay.
Because if you can control where they get out.
Yeah.
Like you have him in a choke point. Like
Yeah, he had a chokehold on him.
I had nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
I know.
And so when so he has, 4 or 5 or 6 ships sitting around the exit point, and you can only send 1 or 2 ships out through the channel at any given time. And so if he's surrounding you, they could not get a foothold. Everybody was in. There was nobody on the other side. So he was able to destroy the Navy and to get this load. He actually ends up sailing Spanish ships back under with the Dutch flag.
Because he's got so many.
Because there were so many. He couldn't offload the Spanish ships he didn't have enough Dutch ships. So he was like, well, why don't you just sail that one? And it was crazy. So yeah, he was pretty darn famous after that. He could write his own and he didn't even have to do anything after that. But he did.
Right.
1634, he's like, I'm pretty good at this capturing thing. And he heads down to, remember our little islands out here? Curacao was a major trade point for folks coming out of Venezuela, which had pearls. It was also one of the major ports for the silver coming out of Bolivia. So we come down to Caracas and then go up to Havana from there. And Curacao was a major point there. The other thing for Curacao was it was one of the major entry points for African slaves. So when they come into to the Caribbean to go down into South America, they offload them and what's called season them, get them ready for the Americas, for work in the Americas in Curacao. And so that's money, right? This is a business. Slaves are not people, they are products. So one of the most lucrative trading products went through Curacao. Both the silver going out and the slaves coming in. So if you controlled Curacao, you controlled trade, the South American trade.
Pretty much so everything in that region.
Yes.
Wow.
And he captures it for the Dutch. That's why the Aruba and Bonaire and Curacao are all Dutch. It's because of Piet Hein. He is still enemy number 1 in Spain. Do not mention Piet Hein to a Spaniard. They know his name. If he goes anywhere near Spain, even dead, they will kill him.
Well, probably single-handedly took years off the weapon.
Yes. Yeah.
Sucks.
But there are statues of him. I was so thrilled when I went to the Netherlands. All over the Netherlands. I was like, dang, it's Piet Hein again. I mean, they love Piet Hein. I was like, yeah, as a Spanish historian, this is really a little disturbing.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's all over the place. Love him there. But yeah, a little bit of problem. So yeah, so just to show you how much he captures the Spanish convoy, you got a 50% dividend on whatever you put in.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm. Double your money. So that was pretty good. Oh yeah, so when he does that, that's what actually funds his expedition to get to Curacao, and then the Dutch also then have control of that northern part. During this time, Portugal is a part of Spain. So when he gets control of this northern part, which is right over Brazil, this is an issue. Right? So now the Dutch control territory that is Portuguese, but the Portuguese are Spanish. So they are now in the empire, in the Spanish Empire. Right? Their little fingers all in the Spanish Empire. So and that's why Pie and Hein is so important to the Dutch. They're like, wow, this is so cool. we are like, we like thumbing our nose in the Spanish Empire. We are literally on Spanish soil. Yeah, this is great. This is actually Curacao. And that's Pia up there. There's a statue of him in Curacao too. I love it. So yeah.
Oh, that's what it is.
It is. It's really pretty. There's a bridge that you can't see that goes across the harbor, and it's, I think, the longest floating bridge in the world. It floats.
Oh, great.
It's actually pretty cool.
Did you take a picture of it?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's what's up.
You should just watch like a slideshow in class of all the stuff you take.
You're good at taking pictures.
You traveled to a majority of the places that we had to study for that quiz or no?
I've been to a little less than half of them. Been to all of the Spanish islands, all the Greater Antilles I've been to, all of Central America and Colombia, and then quite a few of the islands that we've studied.
What was your favorite place?
I don't have favorites.
Yeah.
I mean,
What about
honestly,
like a top 5?
if I had to live
Experiences.
Yeah, if you had to live somewhere.
somewhere, if I
there you
had
go.
to live somewhere, it'd be Barbados.
For sure. Have you ever been to Turks and Caicos?
That I haven't. I've been to the Bahamas, but not Turks and Caicos. Bahamas, I can live in the Bahamas too. I've lived on an island. I lived in Puerto Rico for 3 years, and yeah, it's lovely, but it gets tiring being on an island after a while, especially when you're a grad student and have no money and you can't get off the island.
I went to Pass.
Me and James have done it for 20
Seems like a
years
route.
now.
Okay, so
I'll go with that.
you got. I get to wear my pirate shoes next week. You're gonna be pirates. If you get a chance, go check out Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one.
First is Black Pearl.
The good one.
The good one.
Well, aren't there 5 of them?
Yeah.
5?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of like
They have like the second one and the last one on Netflix right now, and I'm like,
Why
why?
not the first one? It's Disney.
Or like
Disney
anything
has
else.
control of
Yeah.
it. But we have it in the library. Please watch it in the next week.
But you actually want us to watch
I
it?
actually
Don't you
do
worry,
want you to watch
focus.
it. Yes. Don't rely on your memory of it from whenever. Please go watch it.
Peter, it's so rude.
I tried to watch it recently and I just couldn't. Like,
You have to watch it.
I like the one
Office hours today
where
were the same as yesterday.
I
But I had a class during that time.
Okay.
Can I take it tomorrow?
Probably last one.
Yeah, you take it after, right after
just
that.
not good.
Thank you.
And you're gonna do both of them.
Yeah.
I just had that moment. Thank
I
you,
don't
Professor.
You're welcome.
I don't think I'm gonna make it to class tomorrow.
Thank